Good day everyone, welcome to Slide Med. Today we're going to look into anemia, and this is going to be our second tutorial we are having on anemia. In the first tutorial we looked at we gave a proper introduction to anemia. Then we also looked at different classifications of anemia. We saw the morphological classification and the etiological classification, but we only took the first two types of anemia under etiological classification in the first video, so you can check that out. The link will be in the description below. So in that first video we only took hemorrhagic anemia and hemolytic anemia under etiological classification. So in this video we're going to complete that. We're going to look at the other three you are seeing on your screen, which is nutrition deficiency anemia, aplastic anemia, and anemia of chronic diseases. We're also going to look at the signs and symptoms of anemia in this video. So let's jump right into it. Now let's look at nutrition deficiency anemia, which is the first type of anemia under etiological classification we're going to be looking at today. So we see that nutrition deficiency anemia is anemia that occurs due to deficiency of a nutritive substance necessary for erythropoiesis. Okay, so we see substances like iron, proteins, and vitamins like vitamin C, vitamin B12, and folic acid. So all these substances are necessary for erythropoiesis. So now let's look at the types of nutrition deficiency anemia. Number one we see here is iron deficiency anemia. So this is the most common type of anemia. It develops due to inadequate availability of iron for hemoglobin synthesis. Iron is needed for hemoglobin synthesis. Okay, so when there is lack of iron, there will not be synthesis of hemoglobin, and hemoglobin is needed to transport oxygen from the lungs from the lungs to the tissues. So hemoglobin is very important in the body. So when there is not enough hemoglobin, this leads to anemia, and also it can lead to cases like hypoxia also. So what causes iron deficiency anemia? Number one is loss of blood. Number two is decreased intake of iron. Number three is poor absorption of iron from the intestine. Number four is increased demand for iron in conditions like pregnancy. So all these factors can lead to iron deficiency anemia. Now what do we see in somebody that has iron deficiency anemia? Number one we see is atrophy of the papilla in the tongue. Okay. Number two, we also see dysphagia. Dysphagia is difficulty in swallowing. Okay, difficulty in swallowing. Another one we see is spoon-shaped nails and brittle hair. So these are the features we see in people that have iron deficiency anemia. So let's look at the second type of anemia we see under nutrition deficiency anemia. We see protein deficiency anemia. So this occurs as a result of deficiency in proteins. Okay, so when there's deficiency in proteins, the synthesis of hemoglobin is reduced. So it's almost like iron deficiency anemia. The number three we see here is pernicious anemia. This is the third type of nutrition deficiency anemia we're going to be looking at today. So this is anemia due to the deficiency of vitamin B12. Okay, this anemia is due to the atrophy of the gastric mucosa because of autoimmune destruction of parenchymal cells. So this gastric atrophy results in decreased production of intrinsic factor and poor absorption of vitamin B12. Okay, now vitamin B12, before it can act on our body, it needs to be absorbed by this intrinsic factor from the gastric mucosa. So when there is atrophy of this gastric mucosa, this intrinsic factor will not be produced properly, and then it will now lead to poor absorption of this vitamin B12. Now we took a look at what intrinsic factor is in our erythropoiesis video, so I'll still leave a link in the description below where you can check out that video. It's a video where we looked at the stages of red blood cell production and how intrinsic factor plays a part in red blood cell production, so you can still check that out. Now let's see features of pernicious anemia. The features we see here are disorders of the thyroid gland. Disorders of the thyroid gland. We see lemon yellow color of the skin, red sore tongue, and other neurological disorders. Okay, now one thing with pernicious anemia is that it looks a lot like Addison disease. Okay, you know, Addison disease also affects the thyroid gland, so that's why you see it here in one of the features. You see it as disorders of the thyroid gland. Okay, so and pernicious anemia can also be called Addison's anemia, so they are almost the same, but we encourage practitioners not to confuse the two. Okay, because they are very distinct diseases. Okay, so let's look at the fourth one. We see megaloblastic anemia. Megaloblastic anemia. Now, this anemia is caused by the absence of another nutritive substance called folic acid. Folic acid. Hence, the red blood cells are not matured. This causes the red blood cells to become larger in size than normal, and the color of the red blood cells become hypochromic. You understand what hypochromic means? If you can take a look at the first anemia video we did, it's under the morphological classifications of anemia, so you can check that out also. So now what this megaloblastic anemia is all about is that it's caused by the absence of folic acid, and folic acid is needed for the maturation of red blood cells, needed for the maturation of red blood cells. Okay, so when this folic acid is not there, it leads the RBCs become larger in size, and the name we bring for this larger feature in red blood cells is called megaloblastic. Megaloblastic means something that is larger in size than normal. Okay, so let's not confuse. It's not a big word, it's just another meaning for something that is big. You understand? So that is called megaloblastic anemia. Okay, so now let's look at the second type of anemia under etiological classification. We're done with nutrition deficiency anemia, so we want to look at aplastic anemia. Aplastic anemia is due to the disorder of the red bone marrow. So in this situation, the red bone marrow is reduced and replaced by fatty tissues. So this distorts the production of red blood cells. If you check out our erythropoiesis video, we explain how the red bone marrow plays a pivotal part in the production of red blood cells. That's in the production of stem cells. Okay, so you can also check out that video. It will help you a lot. Okay, so let's look at the causes of aplastic anemia. Number one is repeated exposure to X-ray and gamma ray radiations. Repeated exposure to X-ray and gamma ray radiations can cause aplastic anemia. Number two is tuberculosis. Number three is hepatitis and HIV infections. Number four is presence of bacterial toxins. Okay, so all these can play a part in causing aplastic anemia. So let's look at the third under the etiological classification. That's anemia of chronic diseases. So from the name, it is caused by chronic diseases. Okay, so anemia of chronic diseases is the second most common type of anemia. That is, it is second to iron deficiency. We said that iron deficiency anemia is the most common. So this is the second most common type of anemia, and it is characterized by the short lifespan of red blood cells caused by disturbance in iron metabolism or resistance to erythropoietin action. Okay, so what causes anemia of chronic diseases? Number one, we see rheumatoid arthritis, okay, which is an autoimmune disorder affecting the joint. So rheumatoid arthritis can cause the anemia of chronic diseases. Number two is tuberculosis. Number three is chronic renal failure, which causes the decreased secretion of erythropoietin. Don't forget that erythropoietin is secreted by the kidney. Okay, it's secreted by the kidney. So when there's chronic renal failure, it causes the decreased secretion of erythropoietin. Number four is neoplastic disorders. What are neoplastic disorders? The neoplastic disorders are abnormal or when there's abnormal and disorganized growths in tissues or organs. Okay, so those are neoplastic disorders. So let's take a look at the signs and symptoms. The signs and symptoms of anemia. So we're going to look at how anemia affects the different parts of the body and the features we see in these different areas. Okay, so number one, we see the skin and mucous membrane. Now what happens to the skin? The color of the skin and mucous membrane becomes pale. The skin loses elasticity and becomes thin and dry. And what happens in the cardiovascular system? There is an increase in heart rate, that is tachycardia. There's increase in heart rate and cardiac output. Then the heart becomes dilated. Okay, so in respiration, there is increase in the rate and force of respiration. So such a person starts breathing faster than normal, and then it perspirates faster than normal. Okay, so in digestion, there is atrophy of the papilla of the tongue. I've also looked at that before. We see necrosis in the mouth and the pharynx. Then number 5, in metabolism, there's increase in metabolic rate. In reproduction, in females, the menstrual cycle is disturbed greatly, because of anemia. In females, the menstrual cycle is disturbed. Number 7, in the kidney, there is disturbance in renal function, which lead to improper production of erythropoietin. So in the kidney, there is disturbance in renal function. So thank you all for watching. Please endeavor to subscribe to my channel. I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial teaching about anemia and the different classifications, and we also saw the signs and symptoms of anemia as it affects all other parts of the body. So I will encourage you to watch the first video we did on anemia, because it gave a proper and a detailed introduction on anemia, and we also saw the morphological classifications of anemia. So that's very, very important. So I encourage you all to watch that video. Also, the video we did on erythropoiesis, very, very, very important. We saw the stages of erythropoiesis, and we saw the factors necessary for erythropoiesis to take place. So thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like this video. Also comment if you have any questions and contributions you would like to make on our channel, and also subscribe and turn on the notification bell to receive more videos when we make them. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.